This is The Wheel Weaves, a Wheel of Time podcast with no spoilers. Welcome, listeners. This podcast is safe for first-time readers because it's made by a first-time reader. I'm your host, Danny, and I'm taken on the task of reading through this 15-book mega series. I'm joined by my co-host, Brett, a longtime fan who will act as my tour guide on this journey. This is episode 1, so I thought we'd have a chat before I start reading.
Good idea. So let's talk about this series. So I've read this series probably a dozen times since, all the way back from since I was a kid. And I've loved this series for years. And how many times, just to get this on record, how many times have you read this series?
Maybe 0.3?
0.3, okay.
Yeah.
0.3 of the series.
Yeah.
So when, or how did that all kind of come about?
Okay, well, I was dating somebody in high school who loved the series. And it wasn't you.
Okay.
It was somebody else who loved the series. And they knew that I also enjoyed fantasy novels. I've always been a huge Harry Potter fan, Lord of the Rings, eventually Game of Thrones. I've read those books. So naturally, this seemed like a good fit. I was handed the giant novel and said, here you go. And I remember sitting in my backyard and I tried to read it and maybe read 2 chapters.
2 chapters of the first book?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
so not quite 0.3 of the series. That'd be 4 or 5 books, but...
Oh.
Okay, close.
Okay.
So you got through a couple... Do you remember lots from that book?
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay.
No. I know... Here, do you want to know what I know so
yes.
far? Okay.
Yeah, what do you know so far?
This is what I know. I know there's some magic.
Correct.
There's some magic in the book.
There's magic in the book.
But I believe it's more Force-like. Like Star Wars.
Like Star Wars? Okay.
Like the Force type magic than like Harry Potter casting spells.
Okay.
Magic, I
think. I'm not going to confirm or deny that.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that because that's fine. That's the point of this.
Mm-hmm. What else do you know?
I think there might be some towers, but
Okay.
that also might be Lord of the Rings. So
we're on a roll here. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
Well, I know the book is called something about an eye, the eye of the world. Is that what the first book is?
Yeah, The Eye of the World. That's the first book.
But now I'm thinking there's a magic eye in Lord of the Rings too. Is that also Lord of the Rings?
Sauron's big
that
eye.
Yeah, that's the one.
You know what? That might be in this book, but yeah.
So I might be also confused there. I assume that time is important.
Okay, I like that theory.
Yes.
First wild theory.
Wild. Time is important.
Are wheels also important in
Wheels,
this series?
not as important as time, probably. Okay. I for sure, 100% know there's a character named Rand al'Thor.
Rand al'Thor, yes.
That's the one I know, 100%, without a doubt. That's the spoiler.
So luckily, that's not much of a spoiler because that's, I'm pretty sure, in chapter 1. You figure that out.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then, what I remember reading, maybe,
okay,
because this might be from a different book, but I think some people go somewhere with horses.
Okay.
But I've also read about half of The Hobbit.
They also have horses in The Hobbit.
And they also go places with hobbits. Horses. So, I mean, I don't know.
So let's get there's magic,
Yep.
There's towers,
Yep.
There's an eye,
Maybe.
There's time, and there's wheels,
Yep.
and there's horses.
Yeah, and the
and
horses...
Rand al'Thor.
Rand al'Thor. But
Okay.
the horses might pull the wheels,
Yeah.
maybe on a carriage.
This might be a crazy crossover episode of Lord of the Rings. So
crazy.
Okay, so why do you think you've avoided this series for so long?
It's kind of been when somebody tells you to do something, so you don't do it out of spite almost.
So me telling you to read this series for the last 10 years has been a negative influence?
Yes.
So that's bad, okay.
Yeah, that's been bad.
That's my fault, okay.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know. It seems like a huge commitment.
Yeah, right?
15,000 pages plus.
Yeah, okay.
Is a huge commitment.
Sure,
We
absolutely.
have a 10-month-old baby.
Yeah.
And reading this series is more of a commitment than that.
It's gonna feel like that sometimes.
We got married. This is more of a commitment than that.
I'm glad that I'm less of a commitment than a 15 book
This
series.
is huge. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how did you get into the series, Brett?
Well, I got into this series, I think back when I was in grade 5 or 6. I read the first book, The Eye of the World.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was pretty young.
I teach grade 5.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine one of my students reading this book.
Yeah, I've loved this book.
You must have been a big nerd.
A little bit, yeah. Definitely.
Did you have friends?
I'm not going to disclose that just yet.
It sounds like you didn't have friends.
I had lots of friends. One was named Randolph Thor. No, but I started this book, and unfortunately, the library that was by my house only had the first book. So I knew there was more books out there, but since the library didn't hold them, I never actually got a chance to read the additional books. So
did you know there were more?
Yes, because
at that point, because I mean that's the 90s we're talking.
In the book, there's more in this series.
There must have only been a couple written at that time.
Yeah, I can't remember 100%. I know it wasn't the complete series, obviously. I could look at dates, but we're not going to go into that. But pretty much what happened was I read the first book, and then about 7 years later, a friend of mine was reading this book, The Eye of the World.
Is that the same friend that I was dating?
It was the same friend. And he said, hey, have you ever heard of this series called The Wheel of Time? And I said, oh my God, yes, I have. I've read the first book like 3 or 4 times. And he said, have you gotten past the first book? And I said, no, I never knew where to find it. So he was actually able to hook me up with the second book. And from there, I just read all the way up until I think it was book 9 that was out, 9 or 10. Can't remember 100%.
Those were in high school, so mid-2000s?
Yeah, so yeah, it was book 9 or book 10. And then read all the way up to there. So, and since then, I've probably reread the series about a dozen times. So it's just been a continuous thing that every time a new book came out, I'd reread the series, and then after they all came out, I just keep continuously rereading them.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I did that with Harry Potter,
mm-hmm.
but I mean, I feel like those books are less in depth, a little easier to read. They're targeted towards children.
All
you
true.
Can read through them in the series of, a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Not a big deal.
Yep.
These books, like, breezing through the series isn't exactly something you do.
Yeah, generally, whenever I look at rereading the series, I try to allot about 6 to 8 months to get through them. But that's really...
It's going to take us a lot longer than that.
Because we're going one chapter at a time through this.
Well, sure. I mean, I'll read a couple, maybe chapters at a time kind of thing. That's what I anticipate anyway. I guess we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why do you keep reread? I mean, like, I know that you love them and it's a great storyline probably, but why do you think you keep coming back to this series? Indulge me.
Because... Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of like a running joke in the community that the first thing you do after you finish The Wheel of Time is you reread The Wheel of Time.
What? Why?
Sounds crazy, right? You just finished this massive 15-book series. Why would I go read them again? It's like 4.5 million words or something like that. I think because every time that I've reread this series, I get something more out of it. Robert Jordan created such a huge fantasy world. It's so in-depth. It's so detailed. The characters are so developed. Their backstories are so developed. There's so many things that aren't necessarily even on the pages until you finish the series. It's just, it keeps pulling you back in. So
a little more in-depth than Wheels and Time.
I don't want to spoil that. I don't want to spoil that for you. So, no spoilers
I think you already
in this
have.
podcast.
I think you just already told me it's more in depth than that. So that's what I have to look forward to.
Exactly. Honestly, without this sounding too cheesy, it's almost like a second family for me because the characters are so involved that I feel like I know them.
Yeah, that's cheesy.
Absolutely.
Should I divorce you for cheating on me?
We'll see once we finish the series.
All right. And you said you would only divorce me if...
You start the books and don't finish them.
Right.
Yes.
That's the thing.
So that's what's on the table here.
All right.
Okay. So you want to get into the first chapter here?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's do it. I'm so excited. But it's not a chapter. It's a prologue.
It's a prologue.
Does that count?
It does absolutely count.
Okay. Well, then I guess that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Should I read it tonight?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
Go right into it? Okay, I'm excited.
Let's go.
All right. Hooray!